dudes, HW here. How are you doing? How are you doing? One of my favorite characteristics about the Kemper, ever since I first started playing it, was that we had this disconnect. We finally decoupled gain and volume. And I actually really liked that. Now, analog amplifiers and models of amplifiers don't really do that. And it's kind of because of the design. I think the original design of the Kemper was sort of put your amp in the sweet spot, capture it, and then if you wanted a little more gain or a little less gain, you could make the adjustment yourself. And if you're thinking of it that way, you know, why would you necessarily want the volume to change when you're just trying to make something a little dirtier or a little cleaner? Normally on an analog amplifier or on a model, you would need to grab two knobs, and as you up the gain, you would need to lower a little bit of level. And that's because you're producing more signal through those gain stages that are creating the breakup and the lovely harmonic clipping, you know, that we all love in tube amps. But, you know, when they designed the Kemper, they kind of like disconnected these two things so that you could add more grit or take or clean it up a little bit without necessarily changing your level, and so that you wouldn't end up in this constant, you know, leveling battle with all your different, you know, presets and stuff. I have appreciated that feature. However, once we went to liquid profiling, they kind of gave us control over that feature, and you find it in the amp section. Another thing was, a lot of people were saying, oh, the Kemper doesn't take pedals very well. And what they wanted was, they didn't like this compensation that was happening to cleaner sounds. So if you go into, you know, they want their boost to really lift up. So if you're playing pedals into a cleaner Kemper, you will probably really like this as well. Although I really like pedals into my Kemper, have always, and also, when I made all that stuff for JHS, those guys used the Kemper for about 18 months, demoing all the pedals. All you heard was Kemper on JHS's channel for about 18 months until we did the big reveal, and nobody really noticed. So I think the Kemper takes pedals well, but if you've wanted more volume lift out of your Kemper and pedals, this is how to do it. Go under the amp section right here, and you'll see something called Clean Comp. Okay, clean comp, what does that mean? Clean compressor? No, clean compensation. The cleaner your sound is dialed in on the Kemper, the more it will compensate the level and it will come up. So let me show you what that sounds like. I'm gonna try to boost something real big here. So I want this should be a boost that should make the sound a lot louder, but with the clean comp at 10, which is kind of what it always was before liquid profiling, and we got this parameter here, you'll hear it has the most compensations. Check this out. First clean, then with the boost. Now, you might listen to that, and I've heard people say, oh, it doesn't get louder. The Kemper pedals don't seem to get louder. It's almost like there's a ceiling. And it's like, yeah, there is. There's the master volume, because it's not getting any louder than the loudest, you know, thing it can put out. And the clean compensation raises the lower stuff, or the cleaner stuff, up, right? Not the lower stuff, not the lower, softer stuff of a dirty amp or whatever, but just if it's clean, it adds a little compensation. Now, if you want the most dynamic, it's important to note that when you do a liquid profile, you get this, it's set to 5. And that's just the default. So there's a little bit of compensation to sort of help balance out, you know, clean and dirty on the amp. And when we have it at 5, it sounds like this. So you see, just 10 to 5, we went from really no increase in loudness to a lot of increase in loudness, right? And now if you want it to really have no compensation at all, really behave like an amp, that's where we get into this thing. Now, I haven't dialed in this sound really. I don't know that this is the best sound for this sort of thing. Here's a different overdrive. See, that's a little more balanced, right? So I'm not boosting as much level, but I can boost that level a lot more. Let me jack up this volume here, and we'll really try to push the front of this thing. Here's without and with it. That's an OCD into a Vox AC30. Let's put that clean comp back up to 10. If you are a person who has struggled with, oh, I don't like pedals in front of the Kemper, it feels like there's a limit on the loudness, right? If you felt like I put in a boost and it doesn't necessarily get louder, it just gets dirtier, right? That's true. That's kind of been happening. But now with this clean comp control, it's been out for actually quite a while. You have control over that and you can sort of decide. The default on liquid profiles is 5. You can put it at 0 and you get, I think, the true response of, you know, when you have a volume pot that kind of goes off and then on, you know, you get these lower volume cleans, right? And that's just the way analog amps work, right? We don't always necessarily want that. I like having a little bit of compensation on there because what I notice is even when I'm just turning it down a little bit, like I'm just going to that edge of breakup, it still is sort of there. And even when I just go to like, you know, kind of not like a clean, but like a little bit of a push clean, like it's almost about to break up. I guess that's edge of breakup, but you know what I'm saying? It's a little more clean. It's just lively clean. You know, I'll say I like having a little compensation there because then I can roll it into just slight overdrive and it doesn't mess with my sound too much. That's with the amp kind of at 5. I'll roll it back down into the more sweet spot. Yeah, we get that volume jump. If you like the volume jump, put that clean comp all the way down. If you like the classic Kemper feel, that squishiness that kind of I think is just kind of there, even when you clean stuff up, you know, I think you'll like this. Now, if I roll it all the way up and I make it dirty, check this out. That's clean comp at 0. Here's clean comp at 10. It doesn't affect that. So that's very interesting to note. It really engages when the sound in the amp section itself is cleaner or dirtier. So you can be very dirty, you can be dirty on the amp. And it doesn't affect that thing, right? It doesn't add compensation there. It feels very natural and alive. There's another control called the compressor in the amp section that will just add a compressor in the amp section itself. It'll control the compression of the amp, and that will actually affect cleaning it up with your volume knob and stuff a little bit. So this is one of those things where it's like no other platform gives us this level of, do you want to adjust this or that? Like these are kind of like unique parameters, and that is one of the things that makes the Kemper really special. Try this out, try out clean comp, and try out the compressor and compare them. Doesn't affect the lighter playing, doesn't affect the dynamics when you're playing, But if you have a clean sound on the amp and you want to go between dirty and clean sounds, it levels it out for you. And that, of course, affects how dynamic your pedals and stuff are going to sound going into it, because we're dealing with a compensator or a compensation, which is kind of acting like a type of compression, in that we have a natural limit on our max loudness, but now we're bringing up maybe things that would be quieter because we have a clean setting, on the Kemper. Hope that makes sense, HW.